Hello everybody. I've just been given a green light to start, so I will. Welcome to the session. Today we'll be talking about the fabric of life, quite a large topic, but we'll try and cover it. This is based on research that we do, I've done every year for actually the last 10 years. Fjord Trends. Fjord is one of our design agencies for the team that I work in. I work in a company called Accenture, and within that, Accenture Interactive. Some of you may have not heard of Accenture Interactive. We do varied things, including television advertising. That's all fine. We do the dragons in the Game of Thrones, if you're interested in that sort of thing. And we also get involved in some of the deeper parts of society, as in trying to work out new services, new brands, and essentially new commitments that some of our clients need to do for their audiences. So these trends are based on the inputs of over 1,400 designers around the world. And it's been reviewed by another 20,000 individuals. So I'm not saying they will stand up to your critique and be good for you, but we feel pretty good about them, and I feel proud, and that will come out in this discussion. Okay, but first thing, before I transfer a load of things that have been done by loads of people, I'd like to just introduce a little bit about me, because I can't help myself during presentations like this than give a little bit of me out. So I want you to know just a little bit more. So with that said, who am I? I'm this guy, and the corporate photo has me in pretty much the same outfit today. It's like to be on brand. I do have other trainers. They're all Converse and they're all blue, but I do have other versions than this one. But who am I? I am a parent. I'm a carer for a severely disabled daughter. I'm a volunteer at a swimming club. I'm a husband, and I'm a friend. There is relevance here, but if you do want to talk to me about those topics, you can do that after. My strengths, according to Gallup, which is a strengths finder tool, is I'm a arranger, I'm good at communication, hopefully, I'm good at connectedness, I have positivity, and I have self-assurance. Positivity doesn't mean that I think the world is perfect. Positivity just means I think we can make a change. And with that, I have a growth mindset. So I have this feeling that I can do better, and a feeling that I can learn things quickly. I have no degree education. This is not based on evidence. However, my experiences, I've got to this stage of life doing pretty well, and I feel happy about it. But I believe that effort is also required in that. A few more things about me. I don't like my job 1 day in 5. That may be today, it may be tomorrow, but generally it's more of a mixture of through the week. I don't think we can always enjoy every single day of what we do. I think there has to be some sort of balance. I'll talk a bit about that in a moment. My actual role, apart from speaking here today on a keynote, and thank you for coming, I very appreciate your attention, is I'm a Chief of Staff for Accenture Interactive UK, so I'm responsible for a lot of activities, including inclusion and diversity, training, engagement, adoption, and also the well-being, generally, of our team. But I'm also the Health Experiences Lead for the UK and Ireland in health and life sciences. Again, reason why I'm telling you this, these things may leak out during the presentation. A few more things. Full name, Andrew Neil Finlayson. Is that relevant? Depends. If you want to be more friendly to me, you can also call me Finny. Short name, inherited from my father, inherited to my father's father. We've all been called Finny. It's not been confusing in the house because we use the other name, Andrew, but generally we're known as Finny. I am a human. Yes, that's probably very clear. However, for the people that are looking on streaming, that isn't necessarily as clear. I could be easily virtual, and I could easily be an avatar. But today, I'm actually a human being just trying to get by. Not that it's relevant to the entire presentation, but I live and I'm based in Blackpool, and I always believe we can do better than we could yesterday. I don't know whether that's the Blackpool person in me, but generally, I feel we can. And with this, what do I expect? And this is what the trends are really about. It's about personal expectations and about designing for individuals and for people. People like me, not necessarily just me. Of course, there are many different diverse types. But I've got something going on in my life for you to take care of as a product or brand. I've got something in my life for hopefully you to have some amount of empathy with as you design your next service. I'd like to be included. We all would. I expect a great experience from brands games and organisations, and if not, I'll go somewhere else. I am incredibly fickle. Sometimes my attention with a brand that doesn't think about me, my family, and what my friends and family want, I might never go back to them ever again. I may go once, and that's it. They've lost me. I am very, very fickle. In fact, many of us are, if we're honest with ourselves. With that, talking about the fabric of life, why does it appeal to me? Well, we certainly should define how we, collectively and individually, now you know a little bit more about me, consciously stick together relationships to create a fabric of life. Our teams, if I can inspire anything today, our teams should start to think more about each other as they're developing things for other people, and certainly be less silos. It's good for people, it's good for the planet. We've had 2 years to disruption to the systems in which society is run. This is a global point, of course, but it's actually starting to take its toll. This is the first presentation I have done in person for a long time. I think I'm going to be okay, but I was more stressed today than I was 2 years ago when I did a presentation like this. It's starting to get to us. It gets to us all as individuals and in groups. The choices we're making now, the brands we adopt, the services we partake in, and the services we distance ourselves from are going to be important to the way the structure of the world's going to move forward. As we're facing up to that impact that we're having on a planet, we are actually accepting that it's not just somebody else's problem, it's actually part of ours. And we're starting to engage more in the behaviours that we had in the past, but we're behaving more towards considering nature and the impact. That's a good thing, in my view. But here's the thing. The reason why I started with a little bit about me, we haven't got a very close relationship, but you've learned a little bit more about me. I do believe the trends, as a summary, is it's pointing to shifts in people's relationships. Relationships with colleagues, relationships with society, relationships with brands, relationships to our employers as well. And I'll talk more about some of the trends that relate to that. Some astounding stats, which we probably deny if we were talking directly to one of our employers, but 92% of us are thinking about changing role. 92%. That's a constant sort of figure. That's only 8% of us that think we want to stay where we are. This is very different in the last few years. So with that, I've got 5 trends for you. There's none there. 1, come as you are. 2, the end of abundance thinking. 3, the next frontier. 4, this much is true. And 5, handle with care. Now, they do look visually appealing. Hopefully you think so. Our graphics department are doing pretty good these days. But there's more information online if you do want to research into the backstory of these. You may even want to get some deeper survey results which go into some of these as well. All available online for you to use, so they don't just look pretty on screen. They are referenceable as well. We've always given these trends away, and we've always allowed them to be used by the overall community. Let's go first to come as you are. People, us, are fundamentally thinking different about their sense of agency over their own lives, supported by new opportunities like the side hustle economy. The rise in independence has major implications for organisations, relationships with employees and consumer creators, content creators, which I'll come to in a second. Fundamentally thinking differently. We're having a big shift. So what's going on, really? Well, post-traumatic growth is a phrase that we've landed on it. Not post-pandemic growth, post-traumatic growth. We've been through trauma. We've had a jolt, we've had a shock. People are rethinking who they are. I certainly am, as you heard a little bit about me before. We're reclaiming our sense of agency. Some of you know from what I've just said that I'm a carer. So I'm thinking about what that means to me and what my priorities are. The Great Resignation and the highest job turnover is a big risk for employers. It's an opportunity as well. And 76% of employees want employers to take responsibility for their well-being. Help me mitigate my stress. Relieve my anxiety. So this is a design challenge that we've got, but again, what's going on is the great resignation side. And these areas with these pictures relate to the side hustles. We've got a new relationship, you might not, but we might have a new relationship with craft. So certainly knitting has become more popular now than it's ever been in the last 50 years. Knitting, I mean, a couple of years ago, if you'd have said that on a stage, there'd have been a lot of laughter. It's now, I probably see that. It's probably where it is. Also, the side hustle. It is now possible to have an income aside from your main job and have that respected, not treated like a conflict. It's okay to produce YouTube videos and make money off those. And that's not necessarily in conflict with your job. It may be your hobby, you're just doing something with. That should be encouraged. How can we, me as an employer, I'm the chief of staff guy, how can I encourage that in my community? Not try and not talk about it. Encourage those individuals to be the individuals. So side hustles and the creator economy is with us, and we're rising with the we over the me over the we mentality. It's okay to talk about yourself and what you need now more than ever. Now with that, what's next? What's coming? These trends aren't just about observations of the past. So Come As You Are is really starting to move again to this tension between individualism and us wanting to be individual versus the responsibility for the community. For employers, we've got a leadership challenge. If you didn't have a growth mindset before, if you don't have one now, I'd recommend you look for another job and you don't lead people. Yeah, absolutely don't lead people. If you're a fixed mindset person, quit, because it's not your time. It's not even just a trend, it's a threat to us, and we should take these things very seriously. We've got to rethink our employee value propositions, and for those of you that think, well, I'm just an employee, you've got to be part of that enhanced value proposition. We've got to create that community. The trend is saying to us, we've got to create that community. We are a voice. We are certainly not just part of it anymore, one of many. We are important. And for brands, we've got to acknowledge a new type of consumer, customer, and creator that might use our products in ways that we hadn't really thought through before. Unintended consequences are part of this. I did say I was a positive person, but yes, we can think about the things that should happen, but we should also be thinking about some of the repercussions. Those repercussions can be very good. Some products have been used in many different ways, including increasing inclusion, and maybe we should dial up some of the recognition of how our products and services are used in those different ways to help others. And the last one in terms of what next is design life services and infrastructure to support them. We've got to think about the rise in self-agency, but really think about that from a material perspective, not in the days or the months ahead, but actually in the years ahead. We're thinking about legacies as designers, not just thinking about short-term product launch. How do we evolve that over time? So we want you, the trend wants you to reflect on the rise in self-agency, the me versus we mentality, and have that thought process in everything you do, and think about engaging with your talent differently, the people you've got today and the people you want to bring in. Say it out loud. I'm saying it out loud right now. I'm saying it out loud on screen. I'm recorded somewhere. I am verbalizing the values of groups, communities, and teams. You will not hear me stop talking about it. In fact, some of you may think by the end of this presentation, will he stop talking about it? But there's only a time limit, so I definitely will. But we've got to say these things out loud. Say them on social media. Express your views. And really, the last point is to get creative, I think, on the company's value proposition. Whether you are a company of 5, whether you are a company of 3,000, or like the one I work in, which is huge, with 675,000 people, we have a responsibility to essentially work across the spectrum. I did say I live, sort of say, in Blackpool. I recognise multiple sources of income as a good thing, but some of my corporate colleagues that maybe work in some of the larger cities may not. How do we create that sense of overall inclusion? So let's make this happen. Now, this could be the end of the presentation, but it really isn't. But this, to me, of all the trends, I like starting with this one because it kind of sets the tone. for how we think and feel about each other, quite honestly. I'm flipping to now the end of abundance thinking. It's quite an unusual one. You could easily associate this straight to sustainability, but it's not really just that. But you'll hopefully hear about this in a minute. It's again, not just sustainability. We've been able to rely on the availability and convenience of things that you want, and don't ever think again, almost not even pragmatically, I want a certain type of bread. If it's not included, I'm going to feel upset with the store. I need so many toilet rolls. I have to buy 12 at once, if that's what your way is. But is that really how we should be thinking? That we're so specific and not pragmatic anymore? No, from a design perspective, we've really got to start planning our services towards expectations of scarcity, shortages, distribution delays, austerity laws. Very hard to talk out that one without feeling negative, but sustainability factors too. Nature positive, but more important, challenging consumption. Really challenging consumption. With this said, it's hard not to confess that I'm a liberal thinker at this point, so if you want a conservative viewpoint, there are other viewpoints available online. But as a more liberal thinker, I would say disruption due to goods and worker shortages, inflation, are a problem for us to really fix in society. I can't do that with a trend, but I can recognise it. We've got disruptions due as well to climate change, which is heartbreaking when you see them. And that is an area of Madagascar, which is one of the middle picture there with the trees. That's an area that has been scientifically proven to be the first major area that is specifically human climate change induced. Frankly, it's upsetting to see. But I think this trend is really saying to us, not all the warnings that I've just said, the trend is saying, let's remember the interconnectedness of supply. Let's remember the repercussions of those decisions. And when we're designing new products and services, let's try and think through what happens if it's not available. Do we have a backup? Should we stock more in our warehouse if you are a supply chain person? Should we look to have more warehouse space to stock more, just in case maybe the most vulnerable people in our society don't have access to something because we were so busy looking at the profit? Again, you heard me there with a slight liberal thinking point, but maybe we should think about how we're using our money, all of us, and think about those repercussions. So it's a bad state, but what's next? Well, actually, you can protect your brand's reputation. Brand reputations can be protected through supply chain, marketing, and incredible customer services. You can maybe celebrate a few times at the bottom right when you don't have the stock available and explain why. And maybe people will start to understand. Not explaining why makes most of us feel completely ignored. That's maybe okay. We can design for the balance between affordability and sustainability. And then there is a mindset shift as part of the what next, which is probably the most poignant thing I'd ask you all to have, is if we can try and decouple, separate completely innovation from new. There is an ability for us to reuse more than we've ever done before. We can bring in product, reclaim, reuse, repair, get it out. The repair economy, I've got lots of stats on this, the repair economy is back. And as a design trend, it's something for us to celebrate. A returns process isn't disposal. A returns process may be reuse, maybe charity giving. We can think about things differently if we take full notice of this trend. So really the last thing, and the picture at the top there is, yeah, it is a cloud, it is a forest fire, it was caused by humans. We can certainly do better, but it's to rethink abundance and collaborate to tackle climate change. We can all make a small difference, and every small difference counts. So with that said, think, say, do. Got a few more of these to go, so we can contemplate what the supply chain disruption means for your business and really think through the intended and unintended consequences. We can tell innovations teams and product development teams that maybe it's not new. Can you reuse things? Can you revisit things even more than you've ever done in the past? And I suppose we've got to establish that sustainability roadmap. Even if that roadmap only has 10 points on it, please get something. I've worked with a really large client recently that has a fundamental problem in thinking further than about 6 months in the future. It's disheartening. It's okay to have a roadmap and a vision and try and plan towards it, especially in this one area. Now, in this next trend, it's actually quite a swift one. So it's the next frontier. The reason why I'm going to be swift today on it, it is about moving into the metaverse. It is about NFTs. But really it's the thought process for this. And just to express, I know a few companies have been talking about virtual reality headsets and this equipment. Our company has recently bought 60,000 headsets for VR for new employees that join. 60,000 we've got now out there. And we took the unusual step actually to make sure that families, not just the people that work for our company, but families can use them as well. So we can use them for home gaming if we want to. It's a nice thing, and some companies are trying to do this. But I think with this, the metaverse is showing promise, and I'm not going to explain the metaverse here. There's been a lot of other presentations on it, but really it's going beyond gaming now, and it's offering brands a new place to interact, create, consume, and earn. It's got a lot of potential, and for a design perspective, I've just got a few, again, what's going on and what next is for you. So just a few points purely from a design perspective here. I'm not talking about the technology. From a design perspective, it is a new place to go. You heard that I'm a carer. My daughter, who cannot walk and cannot talk, enjoys the headset. It's a new place to go, not just for individuals like us that can get around. It's a new place to go for people that couldn't. So think of it as a new place, not a new channel. It's not an advertising channel. Please don't do that from a design perspective. It's a new environment. Gaming communities are, of course, involved in that. Yes, you can make money, and there is risks in NFT. You can go there. But the new 3D and the new hardware, I would ask you to go and have a look at a few stalls down there which are doing disability and inclusion gaming. So just it's astounding what is in place. But we can adopt and adapt our brands and products to be more inclusive if we just listen to those communities that have historically been underserved. Brands are experimenting. You see Gucci there. Not a brand I've got particular affinity for. I've got to say an individual in Blackpool doesn't necessarily look that as my attainment brand, but you know, some people do, and it is a nice brand, but they're really investing in the metaverse. So brands are getting in there, and other talks today you've heard about Adidas and other brands too. Very quickly on the what's next, and interesting, by the way, this particular diagram, I'll talk about what's next on the main challenge of the moment. This particular, let's call it a seat at the top there. It was created virtually. It got so much interest that they then started making physical versions. So it wasn't the physical version that gained the interest to make it virtual. It was the virtual version, the 3D image that then created the demand. So there's no manufacturing problem. There's no waste problem. I haven't developed this for years and lost loads of materials. I haven't sent it to different countries to try and find the lowest cost and taken the risk of manufacturing. I've created an image of it and created demand, and then I've served that demand. Quite an interesting point from a design perspective there. But the new cultural shift here is coming, that really from a designer's perspective, we can do more in the metaverse to test things out first, reduce waste, see previous trend, and increase inclusion. So that we've got the ability to do trial and error with a lot less physical risk and a lot less waste. No need to go on flights to different countries to test an idea. We might be able to do that online. So designers themselves are thinking this is a good thing. Last thing on the what's next here is a new consideration of ethics. So ethics are not just important, they should be fundamental. Every company should think about these, but I think there's a new positioning in the metaverse at risk, at safeguarding, but like I said, balance with the benefits of inclusion as well. That's the third trend. Only for you to go. I'm looking at Theo. Are we doing all right, Theo? He's my time checker. It's a great colleague. I don't wear a watch, you see. I've gone just free here. Okay, in fact, I'll skip on this one with the metaverse and I'll go to this much is true. Again, I suppose this particular trend really is trying to just question all of our questions, probably question all of our questions about what is true. Is everything I'm saying today true? Did everything I just share with you about me, was it all true? Well, it was, but you've only got my word for it. How do you check? So really, this trend is about those checks. So the ability to ask questions and get immediate answers is easy, but people are asking more questions through more channels all the time because we're not necessarily trusting everything. And where do we go as our central point of trust? Now, from a health perspective, I think the NHS is a really good source of trust. The information's not that verbose in some places. There aren't the fancy videos, but I think if I go for health advice, I think I can trust them. And if you get it right, I think they have got it right in many places, the NHS online facilities. I think that, you'll earn trust and have a competitive edge. But what are we going to do also with that responsibility? So we are, at the moment, picking up our phones 38 times a day. Luckily, I'm looking around at the audience and I'm not seeing you picking them up through this presentation, so I must have an element of engagement, but 38 times a day on average. If you're now thinking, I looked at my stats last week and actually I'm averaging 150 times a day, good on you. Absolutely good on you. But what's that creating? We're asking more questions. We've got a decreased overall trust in every single form that takes. Our colleagues, we're distrusting them more. We're distrusting our family opinions more as well. We're distrusting our organisations more. Losing trust doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing from a design perspective. Actually, it gives us a greater opportunity to include better content and celebrate information and literacy. If there is a health literacy problem, see the NHS, maybe we should put more effort in. So although I see the decrease in trust not necessarily being a good thing for society and for us individuals, I'm seeing it as a great thing for design because it's a celebration for the first time in a while of good quality authoritative content. Good quality content. There's lots of information layers, of course, to go through this, and I suppose we're now looking at some of the messages we've seen, and some of these pictures here are illustrating it, some of the messages we've seen, such as from large organisations that have stock, and wondering whether those sales messages are really true. We're digging down and looking more. So again, that's kind of healthy cynicism in my view. But what's next? Well, we're going to have, for a long time, for many years, a limited space and attention span. I'm fickle, I was already there. But if you weren't fickle, you're going to be fickle probably in the next year or so. We're limiting our attention span. The information layers that we're going to trust are going to be even more wide-ranging than they've ever been. And as I said, the content design that we have is going to be different. This picture at the bottom right here is kind of the thing that you really maybe want to go and see when you go into a physical store. Information about where really am I looking. Do I want the embarrassment, social embarrassment of going towards an area that's cheaper and in fitting with my budget? Why should I have a social embarrassment about that? Maybe I can have content that tells me things more overtly and doesn't try and guide me towards the more expensive products as I go in. Why not? That's a good piece of content. Content doesn't have to be many, many paragraphs. It's overt. It's bringing trust into me. And the next area is conversation AI. Now, I'm trying to look at my time checkers. I think I'm okay. Brilliant, Theo. This is awesome. We're doing well here as a team. Again, first time for a while public speaking. We need the backup. Okay, so in this particular area, so I'd say just think, say, do. Think, research the types of questions customers are now asking in and of your industry. My area is health and life sciences. My goodness, people are asking a lot of questions this last couple of years. Vaccine hesitancy, health literacy. Many people in this group, and certainly in here, had never really heard about a clinical trial before a couple of years ago, but now we're all more aware of it. So in my industry, I see this a lot, but outside as well, considering where people are going outside of those main channels to get information about you, learn about where they are going and try and attract them in that way. In terms of tell your customers what you want them to make, that you want to make sure they feel confident buying from you. Give them every piece of depth you can about your entire supply chain. Design it that way. Design it to be overt. Otherwise, you will lose them. And the information layers, again, bring out new layers to build trust with your customers and communities. Don't just have a product information page if you're a products company. have information about how the product was created, who created the product, where it was created as well, to engage and try and increase that trust. It was 24 years since Google was founded, and we've relied on it maybe a little bit too much for our main source. Something to question there. I do like Google, I do use it myself, but I don't think of that as the only source of my results. And the very last trend for us, and thank you for enduring me through these 5, is handle with care. It's a difficult one for me personally, not just to speak about as a trend. It is a trend, it came out in our trends. I think I've been writing about this trend for the last 5 years anyway, but it came out because it is incredibly relevant. 82% of HR leaders are now reporting for the first time they're tackling loneliness in their teams. 82% of HR leaders tackling loneliness. Hadn't tackled before, loneliness did exist, but suddenly it's in there. There's now 20 million users of the NHS app in the UK. Before the pandemic, it was less than 1 million. The NHS app doesn't tackle loneliness. Question, when I link the two of those, should it? Should it? But this is about the desire to care is a fundamentally human trait, and it's now more visible, more valued, and more openly discussed, regardless of connection to health organisations, regardless of their connection with health, organisations must now define and embed care into their practices, offerings for employees, customers, and the wider society. Every company, every organisation is a health organisation. That is a bold statement, but it is now true. The trend is saying it's now true. We now need to consider that more and more. But why? Why do we care? Well, care grew more important anyway. If you were in lockdown and working on your own in a flat, felt like you weren't being cared for, just visibly, physically, than ever before. You wanted to talk to friends more. And when things are taken away from you, we miss them more. So the pandemic did reset this. But really, mental health and care for employees is the big input of what's going on as well. And technology has been used more as a channel than a solution. It's a method to keep contact. I know for some of my relatives that we weren't allowed to talk to for 18 months in any physical way. They were on the vulnerable list. I bought a few relatives a Facebook portal, so it's a really good screen. There was no need for them to get up. It could all be voice activated. We could start a call. They didn't need to get up because they couldn't get up, actually, in the case here, the bedridden. But I could have a chat with them using technology. We had to get someone to install it. I couldn't install it. I was at risk, but there were certain ways to do it. We can use technology now as solutions, not just technology for technology's sake. And care is an opportunity for every single brand. Every single brand we've got. And in my very final couple of points here on what's next, I'm hoping you trust me a little bit with some of the things I've said. I did share a bit about me at the start of this, and you know I am a carer, so I do have a bit of that empathy in me already. But actually, how can you add care to your conversations? How can you add kindness, really? How can we design with care in mind? How can we not just chase for the dollar, but chase for inclusion? How can we declutter? That's a nice speaker next to a desk. I've got to say, whenever I see a speaker next to the desk, I get a little bit of anxiety, knowing that someone on a call is going to say, Alexa, and suddenly this thing will light up and I can't be in control of what's next. So that causes me a little bit of anxiety. But regardless, those can be useful to reduce the amount of clutter we have. And obviously, if you can afford those, but if you can afford them for relatives that are vulnerable, they are an anti-loneliness tool. They are so good at tackling that feeling of being on your own. We've also got to obviously question protecting the data around this. I'm not being too flippant, I've just got a short presentation. But we've got to redesign all the systems of care around us and learn possibly about a few of our colleagues that have got lives and considerations that maybe you didn't even know before the pandemic. Visit, I'm not associated with them yet, I will try, but Visit Everyone Can at the very end there. They run gaming for disability communities. It's astounding. Great piece of work, by the way, just a bit of a mention, only because I saw them before. But the very final thing for me is treat care as both a formal and informal. Really acknowledge that it's desperately important. It's emotionally taxing work to do, but please delve into it. Consider how you can develop products and services and measures, KPIs, key performance indicators, related to them. I'm kind of appealing to you here, but I can't make you do it. But if you did, think of what's going to happen. Clearly communicate that it's not care is not transactional. Define what care means for you and your teams, and you will see happier people. Fact, the stats about it, survey your own teams, it's going to happen. But in case of do declutter your organization of the things that frustrate your employees, processes, etc. Allow them to work at home. I can't make you do that, but if you could, please allow them if it's good for them. Make them go home early, have date night. Make sure they go home early and visit their relatives. I can't read that. So I think, sorry, just wait me a minute. Oh, right, okay, that's good. I need to go to Specsavers, evidently. But really, in this ask here is my design side says, declutter, reduce the noise, increase the focus, and ensure that you're thinking about the people that are reading it and how they interpret things for them, their families, and overall society. And with that said, thank you very much for listening. Please be kind. Now, we did cover a lot there, and quite a few deep topics, which I'm happy to take questions on. There's a microphone available if we do want to ask any questions of me. I won't be embarrassed if you do leave without asking anything, though. Anyone got any questions? Wow, this is good. This is the question that we say, asking once, right? Asking twice.
Anyone got any questions?
Very open. Oh, the lady there.
Oh, there we go. Is it just the Accenture website we need to go to get a copy of the report?
It is. If you go to the Accenture site and then just do a search for Fjord Trends, you'll get to it. Actually, it probably wouldn't take you long to navigate to it easier, but it will find it there. You can also, if you're interested in them, because I do, again, from a research perspective, year on year, it's sometimes nice to look back at the previous trends as well. All other trends are available online as well. So if you do a search using the Google interface, you could probably be able to find those old copies as well. We've got a question at the front.
Hi. Just wondering if you could talk a little bit about the process of how those 5 trends were identified. That might be interesting to look at.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So, so we have a global team of designers in dozens of countries. So these are globally founded. Every year there is a process where we ask who would like to contribute to this year's trends. In some cases, some of our designers may opt not to. It depends on where it is. So it is a democracy, not a mandate. But we get lots of themes collated from for the different countries, and we use service design techniques essentially to get all of those themes together from the individual designers themselves who have already themed, and we're looking then for key data points that may emote a trend or a need to change design in the future. So behind the trends that I've talked through today, so it's only a 45-minute discussion, if we were going into them in detail with all the research and the data points that we've got from around the world, it takes about a day to go through everything and all the reasoning behind it. But we collect all those reasonings anyway, and then we come up with usually 5 to 7. One of the trends as well, you may have spotted it, is usually named after an 80s music track. That's not especially relevant, but just so you know, somebody thinks about that every year. Which trend can we make relevant to an 80s music track? So there's a bit of fun in it as well. It's a community event. It's not. Even the serious topics need a little bit of levity. But once we've got the kind of trends, they go back to everybody and say, is this right? Are there any challenges you've got? Are there any extra points you've got on these? And I suppose for us as designers, there are some individuals that looking at it from a macro future perspective, 10-year perspective, a few individuals are tasked for more of 5, and a few are just looking for the very short term. So it's quite a few rounds that go into it, but it really is if we didn't release them, we needed them internally. We actually started this more of an internal thing to make sure we got our design team to think about intended and unintended consequences moving forward. So we think we've done that, but that's quite a summary of the method. And we have a whole team that do this every year, and I have such admiration for their patience because it's a lot of information that comes through. But yeah, a collective voice is what you're seeing today from one individual. Thanks for asking. All right. Well, in that case, I will simply say, I'm still here. Please feel free to go.
And the memories bring back your memories bring back your. There's a time that I remember when I never felt so lost, and I felt all of the hatred was too powerful to stop. Now my heart feel like an ember, and it's lighting up the dark.